are you?
Hello, hi, my name is Mike Mongo, and I'm an astronaut teacher. I get to work with students all over the planet and encourage them to pursue careers in space and science.
I have a question from Rupert, age 8, Highfield School, and he would like to ask you, are you an astronaut, Mr. Mongo? How old do you need to be an astronaut? How long is the training if I start now?
Okay, so I actually have an answer for Rupert. My first answer is, am I an astronaut? And I'm not an astronaut, and how I became an astronaut teacher is because I'm not an astronaut. I'm 51 years old, and around age 42, I was thinking about what I'm going to do next. I have a career of doing all the things I've ever wanted to do, which is encourage every young student or even grown-up person to practice, do what you want to do as a career. And I had done that. And I had gone down the list, and one day it hit me. One day I was thinking about what I was to do next, and then it hit me that the one thing that I wanted to do most of all I had not done, and that was astronaut. Okay, remember, I'm 42 when that awareness hit me, and suddenly I was panicked because I was going to have to go the other half of my life and not have the opportunity to be an astronaut. Because if you're not an astronaut at age 42, chances are you're not going to get to become an astronaut, particularly if you haven't specifically trained for an astronaut. Now, here's another part of that answer, Rupert. Because you're 8, what astronaut means to you is different than what it means to me, because your technology is going to be a lot more advanced than the technology has been for me, which has been very much advanced compared to the people that came before both of us. So the opportunity to be an astronaut right now is different than the opportunity it is for you. And how long it takes you to train to be an astronaut, well, if you're 8, you could start training right now just by paying attention to subjects in school, doing what you really love, and that doesn't mean necessarily playing video games or playing a particular sport you're enjoying but you're not necessarily advancing in. Like there's a lot of things I do that I enjoy doing, but I know I'm not going to do professionally. So another thing is, there's going to be subjects that you're not so good at that you have to pay attention to. We all have to do that. So this is to Rupert and everyone. If you want to do something, becoming well-rounded is also a really good way of giving yourself advantages towards that end. So you, as an 8-year-old, just do what you love, practice it, and work hard at the stuff that you don't love so much. And let people know that what you want to do is to become a space explorer, because we may not call the next generation of space explorers astronauts. In fact, when I talk with young students, you're a young student, 8-year-old Rupert, I explain that I call the next generation of space explorer humanaires, like legionnaires, which is what the Roman advanced guard was. They went out and did big things and accomplished terrific goals. And when you are out in space doing things like living in space and playing sports in space, which to me is a really fun idea, somebody's going to get to be the very first space athlete. And so many young people really enjoy playing sports, and it's so competitive that by explaining to somebody like Rupert that they can play sports in space, it moves their thinking forward and envisions a whole different kind of future, one filled with possibility and hope. And that's part of my work, pointing a way to a future where it works out for everyone, as opposed to what we have right now. A lot of times, particularly with our global climate crisis that we're facing and the idea of scarcity. Rupert, 2016, where you and I are having this dialogue with all these other people listening right now, we believe we have convinced ourselves that there's not enough on the planet for everybody. Funny thing is, if you just go 100 miles up, you're in low Earth orbit. And once you go up that 100 miles, which is actually very difficult to do, once you make it to that, it's really easy to get pretty much anywhere else in the solar system, because it doesn't take a lot of fuel to move in that atmosphere, or lack of atmosphere. Atmosphere is what creates the resistance, which makes it difficult to get up to that 100 miles. So when you're up in space and you can go up there, now there's so much resources. There's metals and asteroids, and there's hydrogen on the moon, and there's water, and there's just amazing things everywhere. Did you know, for instance, that it rains diamonds on Jupiter? And that idea that we have a solution to all the challenges that face us is what gets me excited about communicating to you, Rupert, that you at 8 can start to practice to be a space explorer right now, and just by thinking about it and putting your eye on the prize, you give yourself a critical competitive advantage over everybody else, because maybe all your 8-year-old friends don't realize that tomorrow's jobs are in space. By you thinking about it right now, you're ahead of the curve, you're ahead of the game. So keep up the good work.
You travel around the world speaking to children like Rupert and his sister Horatia
Yeah, what a beautiful name.
to let kids know that career in space is attainable, is desirable, is exciting, is possible. You've also written a book to convey those messages. Could you tell us about the book?
Instruction manual.
Yes.
Yes, the Astronaut Instruction Manual. So that book, I wrote it around the same time when I was 42, like I said, I'm 51 now. After I wrote it, I had a background in computer science and in marine biology, and not specifically space science. So then after writing the book and having done the research and putting it all together, I self-published and then went out and promoted it by speaking in front of classroom and having young students teach me on how to get the message across to them, which was another new experience. And that was one of the best parts. So then I got to go for many years and teach in classrooms, be invited to talk about space. And then in 2011, I got invited to DARPA's 100-Year Starship Conference, the 100-Year Starship Public Space Symposium in Orlando, Florida. And a funny thing happened there. There's about 1,000 of the top space science thinkers in the world there talking about building a starship and getting to producing an interstellar space achievement within the next 100 years. And with all these people there, with all the discussion of the length of time it's going to take and how it's going to be multi-generation, there were no children. Like, it's so funny because at the end of the conference was a 4-day amazing symposium. 4 days, just one of the best experiences of my life. They're asking the amassed audience in the big ballroom, are there any questions, any observations? And I'm waving my hand like a madman. I'm just like, me, I have one. And Dave Nayland, who's one of the heads of DARPA, used to be, I think he still works with DARPA, he's like, okay, I see you have a question. It looks like it might be good, or an observation. He picks me and I said, first of all, this is amazing. This is one of the best expenditures of tax money ever, to talk about something as forward-thinking as interstellar space exploration, to the advantage of humankind. And the second observation I have is that with all of these people in this room, that talking about a process that takes at least 100 years, we have failed to bring children here. There are no children. And it was like you could hear a pen drop. It was like, it was unbelievable how people responded to it. It was like suddenly a light bulb went off with everybody, like, oh my Google, we forgot the kid. And for space exploration in general, we must pass the baton on too. If we think of it as so many grown-ups, such as myself, such as you, think of space exploration, and we don't put the kid quotient in there, the young student quotient in there, and these are the ones who are going to be carrying our vision and our dream, and I think our purpose. I think we're here to go to space. How the whole development of the universe happens, stars turn into everything, and then everything turns into life, and then life goes back into space. And it's not going to be grown-ups who are going to be riding starships. It's going to be the children of children, maybe the children of children of children. Like, I don't know if you noticed in the news that yesterday they discovered a new exoplanet. The ESA announced the discovery of a new exoplanet,
yes.
Proxima Centauri B, and that's so. It's like, hello, there's another potential Earth out there. Don't you want to go explore it? Now I don't know. You know this game, No Man's Sky? Okay, there's a video game called No Man's Sky, and it's just this infinite universe. It just came out this month, and you go and explore the universe. It's pretty solo. It's very solemn as a video game. There's a real meditation to it. It's contrary to many of the traditional video games. You're not killing zombies. There's no Nats per se, and it's very popular right now. And now, right when that video game comes out, we for certain discover the existence of an exoplanet at the star that is absolutely the most closest to it, which is still 4.3 light years away. But I mean, it could be worse. So the closest star to us has a planet that looks like it could be an Earth analog, parallel to Earth. So all of this excitement in this chat and talk that is all bound up inside me and exploding out right now is what I get to share with students all over, and not just with students in the UK or in the USA or in Europe, but in places like Haiti and Cuba. I've been to Cuba 4 times to let students know that they could grow up to live, work, and play in space. They explain Spanish to me, and I explain science to them.
How do you, on a practical level, work with schools worldwide to encourage teachers to bring space and space technology and exploration into the curriculum? How does that work?
Here's the funny thing. It sort of connects with what I was just saying. I am the only person that these students in Cuba who has ever said to them that they could grow up to be a space explorer. There is no other person in their lifetime, and I'm working with 5th, 6th, and 7th and 8th graders and high school students, secondary students, that they've never heard the idea that they could grow up to live, work, and play in space. Same thing with the kids in Jamaica. Same things with the kids in Haiti or the children in Puerto Rico. No one's ever said you can be the first astronaut from Montego Bay. You have to imagine what impact that has on it's like there's a whole section of the student's imagination that exists but has not been cataloged, and suddenly it just starts moving. And then they leave the classroom and they're going to talk about it for a long time after that. It's a brand new idea. It's like discovering a new candy or a new color. Can't get enough of it. And so these students are all changed and excited by this. Well, naturally, teachers are into this idea as well in schools. And so when I started, like it's been almost 10 years? Yeah, about 10 years that I've been doing this, the word gets out, and I've got a reputation, and I'm Googleable, etc. And then the book is now a big hit. So the word gets out, and people contact me and say, can you come to our school? And a lot of times I do Skype conversations. Like I Skype with a classroom, and it's the same sort of energy. It's not the exact same, but the ideas that are important. And they get the ideas, like ideaXme.
Do you attach your Skype lesson or Skype talk to a particular subject at school? I mean, is it attached to mathematics? Is it attached to physics?
On the class, it'll depend on the time. Even like during World Space Week, it's sort of general. I can take this from a number of different angles. I definitely put a vocational spin everything I'm talking about. By great fortune, I'm very happy to have people who are a lot smarter than me as my friends, who work in space science, who regularly explain how everything works to me. Like you and I were talking earlier, and I mentioned Rachel Armstrong. Wow, this person is pretty much one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, and she's so not aloof about it. She doesn't make you feel less intelligent by having a conversation with her. Though, to be fair, I just love to sit at dinner when we're at conferences or whatever and just listen to her. So listening is a really important skill.
If the government of Germany, Abu Dhabi, France or the UK said, hey, Mike Mongo, we'd like you to develop a space course for part of the 10 to 11-year-old curriculum, where would you start? What would you do?
Well, first of all, I've kind of had a couple approaches like that already, which is very cool and very exciting. And the thing is that I am a huge fan of inclusion and diversity. Not just a fan. I don't just put lip service to it. I work at it all the time. And for instance, when I'm in a classroom, if I show a classroom the 12 people who have walked on the moon, they will see a group of 12 people who are male and white. And in doing that, what happens is unconsciously, I would lose 75% of the classroom. And as an educator, as a STEAM educator, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, and now design, STEAMed, I have to be conscious of that. There is a video of me teaching this young girl about Astronaut. She's a 5th grader and did not know that people have been to the moon. This is one of my favorite videos I've ever been part of. And it just happened. We're having a dialogue.
Where would somebody find that video?
Google Mike Mongo 5th grader, probably, and Talia. And I start to pantomime how an astronaut moves on the moon under a low gravity environment. And she looks at me quizzically, like she's not getting what I'm doing. And I said, like on the moon. And she shakes her head, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she shakes her head, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I said, like on the moon. And then I bring out my iPhone, I'm looking at her and she's looking at me, and I can see there's a disconnect here. And then I show her an astronaut bounding on the moon. It was Neil Armstrong, and couldn't tell because he's in a spacesuit. And the very first thing she says, immediately, you see it, she goes, that's not real. I said, yeah, that's real. We watch it for a few seconds longer. She says, that's not real, but a little less certain. And then I say, yes, it is. And then she looks to her grandmother a few seconds later and she goes, "Is that real?" And her grandmother says, "Yeah." And I'm just like, holy smokes. So I said, "Have you ever seen an astronaut before?" "No." And the astronaut I bring up on the screen to show her is Mae Jemison floating in the space station. And you can, when I'm showing it to her, her body language changes from just a slouched regular student looking at a video to sitting straight up, bolt upright, with a sense of pride and accomplishment just by virtue of her looking at this person who is an astronaut and seeing that it resembles her, a person who's black and female. Oh my Google. Once I thanked her for her time and she said she enjoyed it, I enjoyed it, and then she left with her grandmother and I went back to my car and I just cried. I cried because a fifth grader didn't know that we had been to space, which is pretty much the number one accomplishment of humankind other than love. And I cried because I got to show her first astronaut and it looked like her, and she has in her mind that's something I can do. And that just means the world to me. As I explain to professors and scientists and administrators all the time, if all of us don't get to go to space, none of us are going to get to go to space.
Your college friend, Brian Barry, describes you as the most motivated man he's ever met.
Oh my goodness.
Where did this motivation, this drive come from? What sort of childhood did you have? Were you a happy school student? Did you have special teachers?
Okay, that's a good question. I did have some special teachers. I absolutely did, and I do remember them. I mean, Mrs. McCormick in 3rd grade, Mr. Risley in 6th grade. Yes, these are important teachers in my life. Absolutely. And many, many more after that, in college, Dr. Lawler, and people like this who got my thinking going, and Dr. Mew. These are really important people to me. Teachers, yeah, important teachers for sure. What motivated me then was my own natural sense of wonder. I just marveled at the universe all the time. I would constantly be berated for daydreaming. Like I would be maybe just looking at a piece of grass. I used to be just fixated. I was like, wow, there's a whole universe right there. There's so much happening in that little tiny plot of grass. If you look at a plot of grass for any length of time, there's just little ants and beetles and aphids and all kinds of creatures. There's a whole thing in that intuitively. I just naturally understood the idea of microcosm. And then I started to think of scaling and perspective, and I really have to be clear that my growing up experience was rough in a whole different way. As a grown-up, I often tell people that I was raised by cannibals and vampires. Give some analogy in the thinking to understand what it was like for me. And that person I was as a youth now motivates me, has always motivated me as a grown-up, because I got to make that person feel better. And I work to explain this to kids too, that who you are as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old or 8-year-old, 14-year-old stays with us, as you know, stays with us our whole life. We constantly revisit that person on a day in, day out basis. And it helps me when I'm communicating with young students, because I want them to know that in the same way that, let's say they're 12 and they can picture themselves, they can remember being 8 or 10, which is a long time for a 10 to 12 is nothing to us. But for a 12-year-old, the difference between being 12 and 10 is like a fifth of their life. So I then say to them, okay, so you know how you are 12 and you can picture yourself being 10 or 8? Imagine, okay, so in the same way that you're looking back now and seeing yourself at 8, I make them get a memory. Get a memory. Think about a time when you were 8, and they do it. They're all pretty good at it. I'm like, okay, now, just imagine you're 15. Because you're 12 right now, you're 15, and you're looking back at this moment right now. Now, the thing that I blow their minds with, I was like, and here's the mind-blowing thing, that's actually happening. Like, we are the living memory that you will have. And so right now, somewhere in the future, your 15-year-old self is looking back at you right now. And that blows, people's minds. And that's great. And it all comes from the 8, 10, 12-year-old that I was going through all those challenges and wanted a lot more support and encouragement to do the stuff that I wanted to do so that I could grow up and be an astronaut, but instead became an astronaut teacher, which is totally great for me. Maybe I don't get to become an astronaut. Did you hear that? Maybe. But
never say never.
Every student that I work with, I get to encourage and let them know that they have permission to imagine themselves as a space explorer.
Did you have a chance to speak to anybody when you were going through those difficult times?
All the time.
You had a chance to speak to people about it?
all the time.
What would you recommend to other 10-year-olds going
The
through?
most important thing in the entire world, find an ally. And you know what? Here's them. This is so funny. This one of my most important allies was me in the future. I remember a time when it sounds like a sorrowful memory, but I want you to know it's empowering. I would go to sleep crying, asking for me in the future to come help me now. And that's who I became. So I get to help that guy. It doesn't make sense necessarily to kids that I am helping that 8 and 10-year-old and that 12-year-old that I was now, but to us grown-ups it certainly does. And I make sure that I help all the ones that I can be there for them. And that can be as simple as helping to get reading. Reading is not something, like for me it was natural. Thank goodness for reading. Good gracious. Hallelujah, whoever created comic books, I love you more than you will ever know. Because science fiction and comic books gave me that place that I could go to that offered hope. And likewise, when I find a student that is having challenges reading, I put comic books in their hand a lot of times. Or, finding books that it's about whatever they want to read about. Doesn't matter to me. And when you can pass on that love of that passion for learning to a student, it doesn't matter if it's reading, it doesn't matter if it's art, it doesn't matter if it's math, it doesn't matter if it's of trade, then you have accomplished something that is going to have sustaining value to that human being for the rest of their life. So for me, it's like going around and collecting these jewels and prizes of good deeds. I don't know if another way to put it. It's just like, I'm helping this one, I'm helping this one, I'm helping this one. And I have friends who tell me, like, okay, you're exhausted. What are you doing for yourself? And I say, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, are you helping anyone? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, see, when you talk about you, you're flatlined. But when you talk about helping someone else, you get excited. And you know what? I think it really has to do with all the comic books I read when I was a kid about being a superhero. I have grown up to be that superhero I wanted to be. Batman doesn't have superpowers. Our superpowers is how we can make the world a better place.
How did you make it to college given all the difficult things that were going on?
I was, this is so funny. No one's asked me these questions before, Andrea. And I made it to college by, I had a buddy who I was in a little band with, a little imaginary band with, who went away to college. And then I guess he saw something in me that was worth and encouraging, because he said, come visit me at school. And I went away from where I was at that time, which was in Florida, up to Georgia in the United States. And suddenly my whole world expanded. I had never had this interactions with minds and new ideas, and it was just amazing. And I said, I was transformed. Whatever it takes, I'm gonna go here. And the story goes on, but that it was all the people around me that helped. And I'm in addition to everything else, I'm really entrepreneurial. So I paid for my college. My first year was paid for by selling my comic book collection.
And I read also throwing parties.
And then, which can get you in trouble.
But I thought that was quite glamorous. I mean, most of us finance our way at that age by washing dishes or waiting tables.
I had the village people at my 21st birthday party. Like, I charged people to get in. Yeah, that's really the level of party throwing I was doing at that time. And it always unnerved me because, college students and parties, something could go wrong. And I don't want my future to be undone by what I'm doing to create a future. And as soon as I could stop doing that, like, I started selling T-shirts, doing silkscreen, subcontracting T-shirt, silkscreening.
Was that through the company that you set up called Obey?
Okay, so that actually led me to Obey. I bumped into, that was at College of Charleston, and where I had the party with the village people, and I bumped into, I was out doing my thing, and there were some stickers up, and Obey is a graffiti art campaign that's turned into an international brand. But back in '93, it was just a bunch of stickers that we put up on the back of signs. This is something I tell people all the time. Success, somebody said 90% of success is showing up. So if you're I use that right now in conferences. Like, if you get to a conference, I don't hang out in the hotel room. I go out. I'm meeting people. People say this word network. That is an odious word to me. I'm just making friends. I'm saying I'm surrounded by people who are full of interesting ideas, which is another thing. It's not just about being present, it's being present in the right place. 90% of success is being present in the right place.
How are you with people you don't like? Or can you only speak to people you like and find interesting?
Because of my ego, I'm able to suffer a fool. Absolutely. I will not, on the other hand, tolerate a bully. And I am really, like, speaking of superheroes, I feel like the universe has placed me here just for bullies. And there's grown-up bullies, and there's kid bullies, and I will call a bully out at the drop of a hat.
You've also worked on a hip-hop magazine.
Do you know who the music journal, Andrea, do you know the music journalist Nardwar?
No, I don't, I'm afraid.
You really have to, he's as good an interviewer as you. He finds out this little information that no one has ever asked the people he's speaking with. Yes, I worked on a couple hip-hop magazines, 4080 Hip-Hop Magazine and Hip-Hop versus the World, and I did music journalism for a while. Oh boy. I'm friends with a lot of hip-hop and rap artists. And again, I had a passion for it, and I went and pursued it. That's really what it came down to. If there's something you love doing, don't wait around. When the internet took off, in '94, I was at the College of Charleston doing Obey, and when the internet took off, Wired magazine came out, and I flew to San Francisco. I sent him a letter. I said, I want to work for you. Kevin Kelly sent me an acknowledgement, which was like a green light to me, and I flew out to San Francisco. And I stayed there at Berkeley for the next 4 years. Yeah, because I made that move, it got me plugged right in where I wanted to be with technology and the direction that has become what is our present.
So what happened after that?
I did Obey. I traveled. I went to Greece for a year. I created video games. I did a manual for EA Sports for the NBA Slam and Jam '95, and it paid so well that I got to travel without even thinking about it. And I was pretty young, so I had a backpack. And when you're young and you travel, a lot of times grown-ups are like, "You're like my son or daughter who's in South America right now. Please come and stay with us." So if you have manners and you're cool and you can be helpful, it's easy to travel, especially if you're young. And I encourage that. Then this is the craziest part of the story, I think. I was doing graffiti art in Seattle, and somebody came up behind me and said, "What are you doing there?" And I turned around, and it was Sergeant Gilbert T. Doppelmore of the United States Army. And have you ever thought about doing that for the Army, son? And to be honest, I had never once in my entire creative career imagined doing graffiti art for the United States Army. And one thing led to another, and I'm in the Army. Because there's a thing called the Armed Forces Vocational Aptitude Battery, which is it's like one of these multiple choice tests, these batteries of this just amazing multiple choice test. One of my favorite moments about my entire military experience is they gave me this test, and then you do sections, and I went pretty much through the whole thing in less than an hour, and it was a 4-hour test or something like that. So you score really highly on these things, and they kind of open the door for you, whatever you want to do. And a lot of stuff they want you to do if you're intelligent in the Army is actually pretty yucky stuff. Like, you can be in intelligence, which sounds great, but a lot of times it means coercing people, and that is not great. And so the Army and I had a really interesting experience together, and I was 35 then. And then I left the Army in 2000, before the skyscrapers went down, by the grace of good. And then I started doing exports. I had always done skateboarding and surfing and things like that. And I picked up rock climbing, free climbing without lines, bouldering. I am telling you this just because I want everybody to, like I said, be well-rounded. And I said, pursue your interests. And these were my interests. The only time you can do these things is when you're young and able-bodied, and I did those things, and those were great things. Interesting thing about after finishing doing that stuff, like you come to a point where you're no longer interested in skateboarding, for instance. Though I'd skateboarded my whole life, there really became a moment where I never wanted to ride one again. I just not interested. Whereas surfing, on the other hand, I think I can do for the rest of my life. It just has a whole different feel, interaction with everything. Rock climbing, done. I fell once. I was 40. I realized I don't bounce anymore, and I'm done. Then I came back to Key West, where I started this whole enterprise when I was very, very young. Started working as a researcher on Eco Tour. So pulling up all the information, just disseminating it to the crew and then it would be shared with the guests. And then I started having these interactions with students, or seeing them take place on the boats, where a student would hear about some amazing thing that was happening around them. And like, I was just really into talking about anything in the marine environment. Cetacea, Cnidaria, meteorology, and that passion gets communicated to the people that I was putting the information, sharing with, and then they would share with that same passion to the guests, and the people really responded to it. Well, some of the people that responded to it were these young students, and you could see that every so often, they would transform right before your eyes. Like, this is what they're going to do for the rest of their life. They're going to be a marine biologist, or they're going to be a marine meteorologist, or they're going to be whatever thing. When it hit me, when I was thinking about what I'm going to do next, I had gone all this way and I wasn't an astronaut yet. And so immediately I had to recalibrate. Oh my gosh, I'm 42, I'm not an astronaut. What am I going to do for the next half of my life?
Can I just interject there? You have this incredible sense of wonder. To me, it's not surprising that you mesmerize children. Children love to listen to you. It seems to me that this sense of wonder is sometimes destroyed in children. Maybe destroyed is slightly melodramatic a term, but they lose it. What do you think teachers and parents can do to help children retain their sense of wonder?
For me, it's letting people know that there be dragons. There is this phrase, I'm looking it up right now, that really helped me. It's hard to tell students because it's not exactly Latin, it's kind of a mock Latin. Illegitimi non carborundum. Are you familiar with this phrase? It means, don't let the bastards get you down. And I remember learning that, and I was like, it made me laugh so hard. And I always say that the truth makes us laugh. And that helped. Like, there's a couple things I teach kids. One, everything always works out, even contrary to the illusion of otherwise. Even if it totally appears that the whole thing is falling apart. Reality is so amazing that in this video game we call life, even though it looks like it's falling apart, it's going to work out one way or another. And they give me all the incredible examples that only students can come up with that take your breath away as a grown-up. And you're like, yes, even in the face of that. And then the other thing I explain, and that I use in my own life, is that the truth makes me laugh. And that's the good stuff, and that's the good ideas. And that if you have an idea in your head and it's about hurting somebody or doing something that will hurt people, like driving your airplane into a skyscraper, for instance, and that idea doesn't make you feel good, it's a lie. And then when it comes to lies, my third and final thing is when I give them the set is ignore the alien orders. It sounds like your voice in your head, but if it doesn't make you feel good, it's a lie. The one that says steal or cheat or you're not good enough. I have a really good talk online called How to Get Hired in Aerospace, and it's for college students. And I get to explain that never talk to yourself the way that you don't let others talk to you. Like when you're alone, and we all talk with ourselves. Oh, come on, man, hurry up. Come on, we got to get this together, that kind of thing. And then like when you're really looking good and you're ready to go somewhere and you're like, okay, you're all right, bang, and you're off. But a lot of times when we're growing up, we're not naturally there yet. And so we are so self-critical that we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never accept from anyone else. For instance, never, ever say to yourself that you're stupid. Never say to yourself that you're stupid. Never say to yourself that you're stupid, because it's a lie. And you can tell it's a lie how it makes you feel, because the truth makes us laugh. So these are important ideas that they're life ideas. They are these ideas that get us to the other places that will allow us to pursue our dreams and our passions, like to be a space explorer or to be the first space veterinarian. A lot of times I ask students what they want to be when they grow up, and they give me a list. And then, by the way, while we're talking about this, Andrea, a lot of times grown-ups will ask students what they want to be when they grow up, which is pretty much the most cliche question that you can ask a student. It's so unfair because it's such a time filler, and students know this and just like, oh gosh, another grown-up asking me what I want to be. So come up with a better dialogue or question when you're interacting with students. Like, for instance, I ask, have you ever I ask, what is the thing that you want to do? And 50% say sports. They give me some variation of sport. And then for that, I say, okay, so every pro athlete that I know is also a lawyer or an accountant or they own a business. So what's the other thing that you want to do in addition to sports? And make them walk through that. And I don't let them off the hook. Don't let them off the hook. That's another one. When they say, I don't know. If anybody knows, they know. No one else does, they do. I have met the adamant, I'm putting my foot down, I don't have any idea person. Give me an idea, just make up something.
What was the spark that launched you into the world of space?
It was Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury my mom read to me, and God bless her, and she's still alive. I help take care of her now, and she's still a giant reader, and she imparted a passion and love of reading and writing to me. And she read Dandelion Wine, and then she read Something Wicked This Way Comes. Then I read R is for Rocket, Martian Chronicles, just kept on going. Ray Bradbury, wow, what a writer. Goodness gracious. And I'm really happy that was the particular science fiction writer, because not everybody is so good with prose. Not everybody's such a wordsmith. Not all the idea, I don't think, as great a writer as Isaac Asimov is, and I love his writing. And Heinlein, I enjoy the yarns that he tells, though he has challenges, in today's society with his different takes on things. Their writing isn't necessarily timeless in the sense that Bradbury's is. He has that. The way that his young people see the world around them, I connected with. Particularly with Something Wicked This Way Comes and Dandelion Wine. Those books are my heart.
What was the first role in the space industry? And how did it come about? Because it's quite a jump from what you did before.
You know what? Here's how I did it. I wrote the book, I did the research, and I knew exactly what I wanted, how to get the message across, and I had the book out for a long time before it really got attention. It was just there as a support material for what I was pursuing. What made it work for me was I spoke with every student that I came in contact with. I would be at the grocery store. I tell this to people all the time. When a parent is at a grocery store with a student, they're just trying to buy groceries and get through the line. But if you got a young person right here trying to buy a candy bar or just bored, it becomes more of a chore. We all know what this means. We've all been in the grocery store line. We all see it. The parents pulling their hair out. So if you have a benevolent human being, which as I presume most of us are, saying, how are you doing? What are you going to be when you grow up? Have you thought about doing that in space? To the student that's next to them, they're okay with it. And that was the thing. I wanted every student that I ever come in contact with to walk away knowing that whatever they wanted to do, they could do it in space. And that's a sort of a different take than you could be an astronaut when you grow up. Because astronaut's going to be a different thing. And right now, even right now, what Bigelow Aerospace is working to open a space hotel. So with a space hotel comes space concierge. Just no ifs, ands, or buts. And space firefighters and space managers. And that's just the start. That's just the kickoff. And then more space pilots for SpaceX. And then there's going to be, when we're taking people up on Virgin Galactic, we're going to need space stewards. And then goes from there. It just keeps on going. There will be the first space professional athlete. There will be the first space athlete. And getting that idea across to students. Well, students paved the way for me because I would just talk with students, and then I have a reputation. You become involved in civic organizations, and then you make the offer to teachers. I can come in and teach a class about space. I did. One led to another, one led to another. You learn more as an educator. Well, from me, one of the rappers that I'm friends with, his name is Mr. Scarface. And he was in a group called the Ghetto Boys. And they had a big song called The Ghetto's Trying to Kill Me. And Mr. Scarface is one of the brightest, most sharp-minded people I've ever met from Houston. And Puff Diddy, P. Diddy, has a song called, it says, my songs bump in Houston like Scarface produced them. And that's how important Scarface is, all right? So Scarface taught me once when we were working on a comic book series together, he taught me, study your business like homework, okay? That is such an important grown-up idea. Like when we want to do something, we want to produce it, you can't do it halfway. You have to go home and you have to do homework on a subject that you are purporting to know about or desiring to pursue. That is for us as grown-ups. You can't go home, turn on the TV, watch Netflix, or switch on the PlayStation, or get lost in Facebook? What? No. You have to go and make everything that you do. What you can do is you can turn your Netflix experience and watch documentaries about space. You can start following pages on Facebook about space, or whatever subject is your interest. You can do research on video games that has to do, I play Pokemon Go. And the reason I play Pokemon Go at level 19, by the way, is so that I can better communicate with the people that I work with, who happen to be young students.
Tell us more about the Icarus Interstellar mission and your role at that organization.
I can, thank you. At 100-Year Starship, went to the second 100-Year Starship, the first one in Orlando I mentioned earlier. I went to the next one in Dallas, and I spoke there. I gave one of my talks. I presented a paper. Children, the future of space is 8 to 12 years old. I met Dr. Richard Obusi there, who is really one of the preeminent thinkers on quantum warp mechanics on the planet. He, Harold Sonny White at NASA EagleWorks, and Miguel Alcubierre, who invented the Alcubierre drive, which pretty much everybody knows about if you've seen the movie Interstellar. Those are the top three guys in quantum warp mechanics. And I met Richard there, and Icarus Interstellar was trying to develop interest in their organization, and somebody came up with the ideas they need to create skateboards. Okay, see how it all ties together? And they were really lame, actually. And I said, I had to explain as a person who does brand messaging and audience building by virtue of everything that I do, that this is a touchy thing that you guys are doing, and it may actually be pushing people away that you want to attract in. And that opened a dialogue. Now, you know what? A friend of mine, her name is Dr. Cyan Proctor, and she taught me this much later. She gave a talk, and she explains that when she was growing up, she's in her 40s now, when she was growing up, she wanted to be an astronaut. She was, her dad knew Neil Armstrong, and then when she was late in her teens, she realized she needed glasses and was not going to get to be an astronaut, and was like sort of devastated. Now it's changed here in the future. That's not a concern anymore. We can wear glasses as people who are in space and astronautic. And so she said she had that same kind of, what am I going to do now? I'd always planned on doing this. Well, it turns out she's got a passion for science and geology, passion for travel, passion for culinary, for food, and a passion for education. So she went and got her degree in geology and education, and I think she got a BA in one, a BA in one, and an MA in the other, or MS in the other, BS in one, MA in the other, something like that. And then she pursued travel, and she did food. Oh, and lastly, photography. She loves photography. So she pursued these passions as lines of academic career. That's how she went at it. Till 10 years later, after college, university, one of her friends from university who remembered her as a really cool person, nice, friendly, happy, saw that NASA was hiring a whole new line of astronauts, and they're taking applications. So he contacted her, though he hadn't spoke with her for a decade, in memory, because when you're a good, happy, nice, friendly, helpful person, we're not always happy, but when you're generally a helpful person, people remember you well. And he looked her up after a decade and said, look, NASA's hiring astronauts, you should apply. And so she did. And there was 5,000 applicants, over 5,000. And it narrowed down to half, and she made that. And then it narrowed down again to half, and she made that. And then it narrowed down again to half, and she made that. And then it narrowed down to 32 candidates, and she made that. And then it narrowed down to 16 candidates, and she made that. And then she's at her house, and then she gets a phone call from Sunita Williams, the astronaut, the awesome astronaut. I think Sunita is maybe the first person who's female and Indian. Sunita is just an amazing person. She's a great human and a terrific representative as an astronaut. And so this is Sunita Williams. And so Cyan's like, oh my God, she's calling me because I've got picked. Because that's the legend, that if an astronaut calls you, you're getting picked. But Nita said, I'm actually calling you to tell you that you haven't got picked. You didn't make the next cut. And now the funny thing is, she goes, I felt really bad about it, and you did such a great job. I wanted to give a call personally, and which is super cool. And Cyan tells the story. She goes, and you would think I was disappointed. I wasn't. I was so excited to make it that far. I had gone all that way. I'd done the training, and they flew me out to places, and I was really empowered because of that experience, which is terrific. But the story gets better. A year or so later, she gets a call, and for the very first Mars simulation, Mars analog simulation, where you pretend to live on Mars, the little biosphere type environment, she was invited to participate in that as one of the first Mars, I forgot the term, but it's like a terranaut, because you're not really on Mars, you're on planet. They do it in Hawaii, and it's a hard terrain, and you're in your space uniform, and we've all seen these Mars analogs. And the first ones, she was in it, and they picked her, and then she got picked to be the dietitian as well because of her experience with nutrition. And she got picked because she's a geologist to study the rocks of the area, all those volcanics right there in Hawaii. She even got to use her photography skills because National Geographic hired her to do photography for the event. Now you see how all these things tie in? And she tells this story because pursue what you love, and that's how it worked with me. And with the skateboarding, that's what opened up the dialogue with me and Icarus Interstellar, Richard Abusi. I'm now friends. Like, I can interact with the top 3 quantum warp mechanics on the planet. I'm not as smart as those people. These are the people that talk about all the stuff that people talk about when they talk about warp drives. They're doing the math and science for it, and I'm having like, they're talking with me, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is one of the smartest people on the planet, and because I skateboarded. Got it?
Yes, it's amazing how all the threads tie up if you follow what you love in your life.
Preach on. I want to hear you say more, because I know that you have some personal experience with that too, Andrea.
This interview is about you, though. You're a fantastic connector, and you're a person who seems to be interested in everything and everyone. Who else would you like to meet in your life?
Oh, right now? Well, I'm a huge fan of President Obama. I just think he's just like an amazing educator, amazing communicator. Like, to be able to face all the antagonism and attack and hostility and maintain your composure and remember that you don't have to go the low road, you can take the high road. That's inspiring to me. So President Obama to me is, and he's a big fan of science, and he encourages STEM and STEAM and the maker movement. Maker movement is so important, and as a president, and he talks about people who are gay and lesbian, and he talks about people who are Muslim, and he talks about everybody. And it is an everybody situation, this awesome, wonderful planet we live on and participate in. That's a living person that would be honored to meet, no question. A person that is not living would be Neil Armstrong. I mean, I am completely in love with Neil Armstrong. I am not, like, my wife is just gonna have to deal with that, she deals with my whole space thing pretty well, actually. But I see Neil Armstrong, and I'm just smitten. And it was because when I was a kid, I've been with me my whole life, that image of him in the beginning, and then in the Apollo missions, and then just kept on going. And I've sat down to dinner with Buzz Aldrin, and he's his own guy, and he does his own thing, but Neil Armstrong for me is the guy. So
I better give you 2 questions then, seeing as one of these people has passed on. What question would you like to ask them?
President Obama's how do you keep that? When I was in the military, there was a drill sergeant who was been blown up by a mine partially, and he had special stuff on his face and fingers and everything. And I said, and he always whistled. He was always happy. And I asked him, drill sergeant, how are you always happy? And he goes, private. I never let anyone get to my joy. I keep it right here, and he gestures to his heart. This guy had been blown up by a claymore mine, and like, okay, if he can do it, we can do it. How do you maintain your to President Obama would be, how do you maintain your composure? To Neil Armstrong, I don't know. How can I be around you for the rest of my life? Can I just get your mail? I don't know. I look at him, and I want to know if he thought he looked at the stars when he was a kid. Like the way he looked at everything. Thank goodness he was the first one off. Thank goodness he was the one that said, one small step for humans, one giant step for humankind. That's really, it's not about, I correct people all the time. We are not man, we are human, and it's not a man mission, it's a human mission. And these little simple things, because they're important, and the people who don't think they're not important are generally the people who are in control and not realizing, and like they are in a superior position of power or authority, and they're not acknowledging that. That's not fair.
So the humans and the human stories behind these big ideas are so important.
That's so good. Yeah, it's the truth. You're a really good interviewer, Andrea.
Mike Mungo, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute delight and an honour.
Amen. Keep up the good work.
Hey, this was an IdeaMe interview. Want to hear more? Find us on radioideame.com. There's an X between the idea and me. IdeaMe is all about the humans behind the big ideas shaping our world. It provides help and inspiration for future creators of big ideas, and it's for all those who love big ideas and great stories.